In this video, I'm going to show you how to perform firmware over-the-air update of your ESP8266 based IoT device using Fotahub. If you haven't already done so, start by creating a product on Fotahub. In the Product Creation Wizard, select the Advanced mode. Enter the name of your product and select the versioning scheme you want to use for your firmware versions. Optionally, you can also add a description for your product. Leave the other fields at their defaults and click on Next. Choose the binary verification method and algorithm your device or board uses to verify new firmware versions downloaded from Fotahub before applying them. To begin with, simply choose the value matching the default configuration of the Fotahub device SDK examples. Also set the number of partitions to 2 to honor the fact that firmware updates for the ESP8266 always consist of 2 firmware binaries which contain the same code but are located to 2 different partitions in the ESP8266's flash memory. Click on Next and then on Create to finalize the creation of your Fotahub product. You also need to either clone or download and uncompress the Fotahub device SDK for ESP8266 to a location of your choice on your machine. This was covered in my first introductory video. On your laptop, make sure you have the following general-purpose tools. You need a text editor or IDE such as Visual Studio Code, a serial monitor such as Quilter, and the device driver for the USB to serial converter chip of your ESP8266 board. It usually gets installed automatically by the operating system. The easiest and quickest way to run the examples provided with the SDK is to use Docker. If you choose to use Docker, a dedicated Docker image that is provided at Docker Hub gets automatically pulled onto your machine when running the build commands. If you are an experienced user, you may also opt for installing the complete set of prerequisites directly on your machine instead. They include ESP8266 NoNOS SDK and toolchain. Instructions on how to install them are available on the project wiki page. The ESP SDK comes with 3 examples: Simple, Revertible, and ThinkShadow. We'll stick to the simple example for now. The simple example demonstrates the most straightforward manner to make firmware over-the-air updates with Fotahub. It's kind of a hello world example for photo updating and a perfect way to get started in this field. Now you need to create and run the initial firmware version. To do so, start the Visual Studio Code and open the simple example included in the Fotahub SDK for ESP8266. Go to the user config C file and initialize the Wi-Fi SSID and Wi-Fi passphrase constants with the credentials of the Wi-Fi network you want to connect to with your board. Open the demo product info C file and initialize the demo product ID and the demo product name constants with the ID and the name of the previously created Fotahub product. In order to retrieve the ID of the product, go to the product details view on Fotahub, click on Settings and then on the Expand button under General. Copy the ID into the clipboard and then initialize the constant accordingly. Update the demo product name constant with the name of your created product as displayed in the product settings. Leave the demo product firmware version as is for now. In case you have selected anything else than SHA-256 as the binary checksum algorithm for your Fotahub product, or opted for using a signature instead, you must also adjust the demo product firmware update verification algorithm constant accordingly. Make sure that Docker is running on your machine, open the integrated terminal and build the example by invoking the mindmake in Docker script according to your operating system. Connect your board to your laptop or computer using a USB cable and flash the firmware binaries that have resulted from building the example to your board by providing the serial port it is connected to as an argument. Start your serial monitor app, point it at the serial port your board is connected to, and set the baud rate to 57K. Open the configured serial port, observe how the firmware starts up, and verify whether it connects to the Wi-Fi network. Also have a look at the red LED next to the USB port on your board. It should blink with a period of approximately 1 second. Now you need to create and upload a new firmware version to Fotahub. Go back to the demo product info C file and bump the demo product firmware version constant. You can optionally increase the blink frequency of the red LED on your board by going back to the user config header file and decreasing the value of the blink period constant. Rebuild the example using Docker in mind and locate the resulting new firmware binary files in the build folder. Copy their path to the clipboard and upload the resulting new binaries as firmware version 1.1 to your Fotahub product. To do so, go to the Products dashboard and find your product. Click on the product name to open its details view. Click on Upload Firmware and choose the Upload with Wizard option. Enter the version of the firmware to be uploaded and optionally a comment. The version format must match the firmware version and scheme defined upon product creation. Click on Next to get to the binary upload page. Drag and drop or browse the binaries for both ESP8266 flash memory partitions of the new firmware version to be uploaded, and then on Upload to start the firmware upload process. When completed, you will get redirected back to the product details view and see the newly uploaded firmware version along with its properties. Most importantly, you will be able to find the firmware binary download URLs for both partitions and their checksums that have been automatically calculated based on the binary checksum algorithm chosen upon product creation or in the product settings. Now you can make your first firmware over-the-air update. Go back to the Serial Monitor app showing the execution status of your board running the initial firmware version. Enter the new firmware version followed by a column separator, the checksum or signature of the first firmware partition, a comma separator, and then the checksum or signature of the second firmware partition. Submit the firmware update info string to your board using the Send button in CoolTerm. This will trigger the firmware over-the-air update procedure. Upon successful completion, the board will be restarted with the new firmware version downloaded from Fotahub. To verify that, check the firmware version in the banner showing up in the Serial Monitor output. If the new firmware version includes the change to the blink frequency of the red LED on your board, you should also see that the LED is blinking significantly faster now. Congratulations! You've made your first photo update of your ESP8266 IoT device using Fotahub.